This video will be concerned with business activity monitoring, and we're simply going to get an overview from this session into various techniques that are used in business activity monitoring. We just want to discuss briefly different approaches and get a feeling for what business activity monitoring is. It's an overview of this type of monitoring. It's very important, and it's important in practice within business, but in this particular video we're just going to introduce some basic concepts. So it's quite a short video and quite easy to follow. First of all, business activity monitoring is a real-time system. In other words, it's here and now. It's what's happening right now. It can be interrogated right now to find out what's happening within the business at this moment in time. It's a real-time system that alerts managers to potential opportunities, impending problems and threats, and then empowers them to react through models and collaboration. So what it does is it looks at opportunities, potential opportunities, we'll talk about that in a second, impending problems, threats, and then empowers them to react to all of these through looking at models and collaboration and different techniques for dealing with these situations. So potential opportunities could be efficiency savings, for example. It could be looking at the ways in which production is organized, or the philosophies that the production is following, for example, total quality management or JIT, or the way management sees the progress of materials and components through the system to the final product, and the way the final product links to the customer's requirements. So it's looking at potential opportunities for savings. It could be looking at impending problems. Machines are about to break down, or machines that are of a particular vintage, or they've got an obsolete technology, and what are the threats? It could be the threats of the breakdown of the system that we just mentioned, or it could be competitors introducing new products. It could be a failure of the research and development section to bring about successful products that are commercially successful. And whatever the issue is, whatever the opportunity or potential opportunity is, or the problem or the threat, then the business activity monitoring process enables managers to react through looking at models, trying to solve the problem by conceptualization, by looking at the problem, perhaps making sketches of the problem and trying to analyze what's the best way forward, and then collaboration, trying to involve other managers and people from different sections of the business and asking for opinions and brainstorming solutions. And so it's trying to solve the problems. It's looking at opportunities on the one hand, and it's looking at problems and threats on the other, and trying to deal with these. So business activity monitoring depends on a wide range of technologies working in concert. So normally business activity monitoring is, perhaps it might be people on the shop floor using their eyes and their senses, looking at output, picking it up and turning it around and seeing if it's roughly what was required. It might be using technologies such as gauges and measuring instruments to see if it's of the right dimensions and the right weight. And so different technologies may be used on the one hand, or it might be the use of more sophisticated technologies using lasers, but it might be computers as well, and it might be dealing with the information in the business in terms of databases, handling orders from customers and maintaining records on customers and on particular orders and progressing it through the system. So it's using a wide variety of technologies. It's monitoring the business. It's monitoring the activity of the business. So it's not surprising it should use a variety of techniques and a variety of resources in order to capture the information that gives the picture of the effectiveness of the business and trying to deal with the issues we talked about in the previous slide. But the types of technologies, just to give a feeling for them, and as I said, this is quite an oversight type of class. It could be what's known as ETL, the extract, transform and load type approach, which is an approach to database technology. It extracts data from one database. It perhaps downloads the data from one database. The database may be internal to the business, or it may be a database that's held someplace else. Perhaps a supplier makes its database available to the buyer, so they're able to work out what materials are held in stock by the supplier and when they can be delivered. So it enables it to extract information from one database, then transform it, manipulate the data, and then reload it into another database, reload it into its own database. So perhaps periodically it can go onto a supplier's database, download the current position with the supplier, put it into its own database, transform it, make it suitable, and put it into its own database, and then it has a more up-to-date picture of how it's doing and the possibilities of supplies being on time, the types of materials that are available, and perhaps more importantly, what materials are currently running out of stock, or the supplier is running low on these, or waiting for deliveries itself. So that's one approach. That's one way of looking at business activity monitoring. It's just one technique, but it highlights one approach. So the management will have up-to-date information. It could use process modeling. It takes out some aspect of the work that's been done, the flow of work that's been done on the shop floor. It takes a certain picture of particular processes and then tries to model these. It might do it on paper. It might simply sketch out what's happening on paper, look at the way it's done, take some timings and see how long it takes on each machine and how the machines are sequenced and their layout and so on, and try to model it. It might be modeling it on a computer, more sophisticatedly, looking at it on a computer. It might just use traditional methods. It might use even Gantt charts to work out when one starts and the next stops. And so it's modeling the processes to try and figure out what's the way of best optimizing the whole process. It could have a set of rules for doing this, and these rules could be built into computers so that when data is fed in, the rules will look at the data and transform the data and give it output. So it's helping the management make quick decisions. These rules could be as simple as macros written on a spreadsheet. So when the data is fed in, the macros are applied, and the macros do some calculations and make some projections based on assumptions and based whatever the nature of the macro is. But the management gets very speedy information upon which to make decisions, and it's objective information. It's the information, I agree, is only as good as the assumptions in the engines or the rules engines themselves, in the macros perhaps, but it is objective, and it's for management to make sure that the macros and the rules are properly reflective of what's happening on the shop floor and what's happening within their business. But it's a good way of getting fast calculations done. Could be messaging servers. Sometimes if situations are not running smoothly in one part, the information can be processed by a server simply by looking at the database, and some particular figures are not according to what they should be. The database itself emails out or sends messages out to appropriate recipients to tell it that there is something here that needs to be looked at. So electronically, sensors on machines, robots, databases, a whole variety of software and hardware like robots and sensors and so on. A whole series of these may be programmed to send out alerts to management that attention is required. Something is going slightly adrift. So the business is able to monitor itself through the various signals that are sent from machines and also from people, of course. But that's not the particular point we're dealing with here. But there are a whole range of facilities to help the management to try and keep it on course. Of course, there's obviously emails and inboxes and portals and dashboards and web services. There are a whole variety of tools that can be used as well. Within a business, within a medium-sized business, a local area network might be important for communications purposes and making sure that all the business knows what the activities are going on and what needs attention and who needs to be in place and so on. So there's much more precise control over the business. So business activity monitoring is facilitated by all of these different techniques. And there are others. There are many others that we haven't mentioned here that we could expand into many different slides. But I just want to give a highlight here. I just want to give an overview of what business activity monitoring is about. So that's all we need to look at in terms of these ones. Now, the benefits of business activity monitoring, well, it's real time, so it's happening right now. And the information is in a usable format. It's coming back. Although it's right now, it may have technologies applied to it which make it usable and make it understandable. So if a cutter, a laser cutter, for example, is no longer being completely efficient for whatever reason, the machine itself is able to signal this back, and there's clear identification on the part of management of where the problem is, which machine, and what exactly is going wrong, and how to efficiently put it back right, and do it before it becomes a very costly exercise, before a lot of material has been destroyed or before production in total has been held up. So it's real time and it's in a usable format. It's access to tools and collaboration and model the problem leading to a quick solution. So accessing the tools and having access to those tools, the tools of indicating what is going right and what's going wrong. It's having information flowing back, good quality information flowing back to the production manager, let's say. Having good quality information that's in real time, that's happening right now, and enabling that manager to have good consultation, good communications consultations with appropriate people working with particular machines or with particular processes, ensuring that everything is running smoothly. They're able to deal with problems very quickly. So as soon as a problem arises, the management are there immediately to make decisions and implement change and implement solutions and ensure that production is not badly affected, held up for a long time, and that the machines are brought back online as quickly as possible. The various issues, well, executives could fail to consider the readiness of technology or of the business processes they want to monitor. Now that's could be a business activity issue that needs to be looked at. Sometimes management might feel somewhat relaxed about the processes within a particular company, because for a start, maybe the company has been operating very well at peak efficiency for a long period of time, and somehow there's an assumption it's going to continue ad infinitum. It's going to just continue and continue. Well, we know that doesn't happen. But on a day-to-day basis, they think, well, there's no need to intervene because it's working perfectly well. In fact, there should be routine maintenance, and machines should be taken offline and maintained even before they break down. Don't wait for them to break down. There should be a regular schedule of maintenance to ensure that the machines don't break down. And there should be contingency plans to ensure that when the machine is closed down for maintenance, that work is rerouted so that the rest of the machinery and personnel are not disrupted as a consequence of the maintenance. Change management issues are paramount. When changes are being implemented or are being considered, then there are major implications for business activity monitoring, because there's a switchover. If the change is implemented, the business activity monitoring processes need to be switched over to the change situation. And there is almost a zone of transition, a zone of switching over, because the existing business and the existing protocols and the existing processes will be monitored right up to the time of change, and should be monitored effectively right up to the point of change. And then ideally the changed situation should be monitored as effectively right from the start. So the monitoring process should be built into the change. If it's a new technology that's been brought in, then the monitoring process should be a part of that technology and should fit smoothly into the existing monitoring system. So that, let's say, a new machine brought in that can feed back data in real time about its performance, let's say to a computer, then it should be able to do that and do it in a way that makes the information that it feeds genuine information. It's not feeding data, it's feeding genuine information, because that information, it can be interpreted by the rest of the system, and the rest of the system will understand it, and that will be fed back to the managers who will be able to monitor that particular machine. So the process of change should incorporate business activity monitoring and functions that enable business activity monitoring for the change situation. Effective business activity monitoring requires working closely with the business units to identify key indicators, critical success factors, CSFs, and analyze techniques that provide reliable early warnings for impending issues. So it's essential that the key factors, the critical success factors, are certainly monitored at a regular and high level. They should be monitored, not wait for them to come under stress or break down or fail to perform to standard. They should be maintained, as I said earlier, and there should be provision for that maintenance factored in. But the information should then be fed back to the managers, and these are the critical success factors. But in fact, business activity monitoring should run right across the business to all the factors that affect the business, and should look at all of the various parts of the business and how they fit together. So it should be quite a comprehensive approach to monitoring. But certainly the critical success factors, critical machines, critical processes, critical personnel, these should be kept under more intense scrutiny. These should be looked at more frequently and in perhaps greater depth, because these are the critical factors. These are the critical machines, processes, people, whatever. These are critical to the business. It could be looking at the performance of the suppliers in terms of raw materials and the quality of the raw materials. looking at the activities of the business in total, but identifying the critical success factors for particular attention, but at the same time making sure that the non-critical factors are not forgotten about, because they may at some stage cause problems and jump up and bite the people who are not looking after them. So it's important that the non-critical factors are also monitored. Not as intensely perhaps and not as frequently, but an eye should be kept on them, and they should be factored into the whole process. Executives must let the responsible managers on the front lines deal with their problems and issues in a timely manner before reaching breakdown. So it's essential that the executives at the top let the people who know the processes, the people who work with the processes every day, deal with issues. The chances are the managers on the line know how to fix the situation. Now, sometimes if machinery is extremely complex, it does take a high degree of competence in the area, a high degree of skill level to deal with the machine, or it might need an expert from outside. The best way to deal with that is to have the expert come in on a regular basis for maintenance and have provisions for that machine to be closed down for certain periods for maintenance and work rescheduled or redirected. But in the event of machines that can be maintained and can be monitored locally, then the expertise of the managers who deal with these machines on a day-to-day basis should be incorporated into the business activity monitoring process, because these people have an expertise in the machine. They know the machines, they know what's likely to go wrong, and they know how to fix it. So the most efficient way of bringing the machine back into line is for the intervention of local managers, people who are involved. There may be a situation where a certain machine requires a lot of the local manager's attention because it's breaking down on a regular basis or causing problems on a regular basis. Now that may need to be taken offline and dealt with by an expert, or perhaps even replaced. But that should be signalled up by the frequency of times that it needs intervention by the manager. So these are some of the issues that we come across in business activity monitoring. As I said, this is quite a large area and a very technical area, and some of these processes can be looked at in a lot more depth, but we just need to get a good understanding of what's meant by business activity monitoring, the types of activities that need to be monitored, the way they're monitored, who's involved, and how to keep the business running at peak efficiency. That's all we're going to deal with here. I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.